Seen a lot.
Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I am Sharon Green Middleton, Vice President of the City Council, Representative for the 6th Council District, and Chairperson of the Economic and Community Development Committee. This afternoon, the committee will hear Bill 22-0214, 22-0217, and 22-0218, 22-0223, and 22-0228. And we waited to start until 2:05 because the bill 22-0200 that was going to be heard at 2 was canceled. And that was the Urban Renewal Central Business District Amendment 2. And also bill number 22-53, Barclay Elementary Middle School to Gertrude S. Williams Barclay School. So those were the 2 cancellations. So to begin, in attendance, we have John Bullock of the 9th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mark Conway of the 4th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Odette Ramos of the 14th District, member of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman Robert Stokes, 12th District, member of the committee.
I'm right here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And also with us today, we have Council Member Eric Costello of the 11th District has joined us as one of the bills.
Thank you, Madam
He's
Chair.
the sponsor. Also representing the Council President's Office, we have Nikki Thompson, Director of Legislative Affairs, which is...
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, online. And also representing the Mayor's Office, we have Nina Themulis, Deputy Director of Government Relations.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, and before we begin, just one little housekeeping change. I know that we have been for a while now in person and on hybrid, and thank you for those that have been online hybrid as well as coming in person to testify. That will continue. And just for the committee's purpose, we are voting in person. Our votes are done in person. Let's begin by one second here. Okay, we're going to start with bill number 22-0228, Midtown Community Benefits District Amendment for the purpose of altering the boundaries of the Midtown Community Benefits District, amending the composition of the district's board of directors, revising the enforcement of taxing, adjusting the allowable rate of supplementary tax, and generally relating to the Midtown Community Benefits District. This bill was introduced on April 25th, 2022. The hearing was recessed to allow the sponsor and agency representatives to discuss amendments proposed by the Department of Finance. The bill was sponsored by Councilmember Costello. Councilmember Costello, would you like comments at this time?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you and the committee's consideration of this bill. That I've worked with Councilman Stokes, who also represents the Midtown Community Benefits District within the 11th and 12th districts. There are 2 amendments on our colleague's desk. If it pleases you, Madam Chair, at some point I'd like to ask for testimony from Eric Souza, who is the Executive Director of the Midtown Community Benefits District, to provide additional clarification, and happy to explain the amendments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. And just for additional clarity and transparency, Baltimore City has a number of benefits districts. Property owners that fall within these districts incur special costs for added services. Property owners and the city benefit from the arrangement. One thing to point out is that the council reviews all of the districts ever so often to assess whether they are effective and whether they should continue. This arrangement reflects a genuine partnership that Baltimore City has with its residents. We heard from agency representatives, and there are amendments, and the Finance Department has amendments. Did we need a review of the amendments?
Yes, Madam Chair, we can jump through those. And I believe we discussed these at the first hearing. The finance, so there are two separate amendments. One is from the Department of Finance and the other is from me. The one from the Department of Finance eliminates the word credits, and I think that either Pedro or Elena can speak to the necessity for that amendment, but I believe we were all in agreement at the last hearing moving forward with that amendment. So I would defer to Elena or Pedro if there's any specific questions on that.
Thank you. In the committee, it does have copies of those amendments. Thank you.
Elena DePietro from the Baltimore City Law Department. What that language, if removal of credit from that particular part of the bill, it's existing language. It's been there since we first started doing benefits districts. So what it would do is that section requires that that applying the rate established for the tax for the benefits district tax in the same way that you would apply the rate for a property tax. So in terms of assessments, credits, and those exemptions, that's, well, not exemptions, assessments, credits, and I forget the other ones. But if you remove it, then you don't have any guidance as to how to apply a credit. Or you would just not, I think the interpretation would be that you would not use the normal, or the same methodology that you would use for a property tax credit to the benefits district. You wouldn't apply them at all. So we have been in the past applying credits to the benefits district tax. So that would be a pretty major change in how they are collected.
Yes, and Department of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pedro Aponte, Assistant Budget Director for the Department of Finance. The original amendment that we proposed back when this legislation was introduced to reinstate the work credit into the law. As it is right now, individuals who pay the surcharge for the Midtown Special Benefits District, they paid at the net amount, meaning that they have to take into account credits, and that value that is left is where the surcharge apply to. We wanted to leave that word there. There were some conversations and discussions with the sponsor of the bill, and the intention of the district, which has been discussed with the taxpayers within the district, is to owners of owner-occupied properties within the district should continue receiving the benefit as they do for regular taxes. That means that reinstating the work credit, but only or deleting the work credit, but making sure that those individual owner-occupied residents still get the benefit of the credits that they receive as an owner-occupied. That means they target the homeowner's tax credit and homestead tax credit. Those individuals will pay at the net value. Other property owners will pay at the gross value. So they will be paying an additional payment to the district.
Thank you. Is there a motion to move the amendments?
Chair, I have a question.
Councilwoman Ramos.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about the enforcement piece and just in general. Is this same language in all of the benefits districts, or are we just talking about Midtown here? I think that's a law department question.
All of them.
I believe it is in all of them. I think it's standard for most of our benefits districts. Pedro, you might know something different. But
It's not as the exact context in each of the districts have similar language. This will be the only one that removed entirely that didn't have it before. Our interpretation or knowledge is that when those districts were created, they had that language already set at that time. This is the only district that is changing after several years of formation. That's the only difference.
So what I'm just trying to find out is that by adding these two amendments, the one from the sponsor and the one from finance, it makes it consistent with all of the other benefits districts.
There are 5 districts. 2 of them are taxed at the gross value. One of them incorporates a high performance tax credit into the account. This will be consistent with that language, but this is unique because it's only using homeowners, or it will be homeowners will be entitled to get that benefit of reduced surcharge payment.
So if I get this,
all districts are different. There's no same language for all of them.
well, why?
That's not a question I can answer.
Because doesn't it, so if I understand correctly, what we're trying to do here for Midtown is for every, there's the homeowners that, and some of the businesses that are in the benefits district, and the amount of the surtax is based on the property taxes that are assessed. And then what we're trying to do here with the math is to say that assessment, the surtax on the assessment is reduced by the amount of the credit, correct? So that the surtax goes to the new
Correct.
Potential revenue coming in and not the original. Is that what we're saying?
That is, yes, that's basically what it is. But it's, the reason why there can be different is because the enabling legislation allows the city council to establish each district as it sees fit in some respects, not all respects. But there is discretion granted to the city council to apply different rules to the different
Okay, so
benefits
Thank,
districts.
thank you, Elena. I'm going to allow the executive director, come up and recognize, state who you are and who you represent, and if you want to add to this conversation, you feel free.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Eric Souza. I am the Executive Director of the Midtown Community Benefits District. I was just stepping up to help provide some clarification as to what our board's goal was with trying to get this amendment through in regards to the credit.
Thank you.
So we are not trying to remove the homestead tax credit application for this credit, nor are we trying to remove the targeted homeowners tax credit portion of this tax credit, which is synonymous a lot of times with the homestead tax credit. We are only trying to have this applied to credits that are by application based. So that would be a pilot tax credit, the historic tax credit, enterprise zone tax credit, high performance tax credit, the historic 2 tax credit, the home improvement tax credit, and the new construction tax credit. So out of all of the tax credits that go through our district, there's only 102 properties, okay, that fall within what we're trying to catch. And 11 of those 102 properties are residential. All of the other properties are commercial properties. So we're essentially trying to align our credit wording with the other management authorities throughout the city to be able to participate in getting the full surtax amount on those properties that are not inclusive of a homestead tax credit or the targeted homeowners tax credit.
Okay, so I had it backwards.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
I had it backwards.
Which is
so
the
you're
reason I
not
wanted to
trying to, you're actually trying to collect more revenue. You're saying, once these tax credits are, even though these tax credits are applied, the surtax is applied to the amount before the tax credits are applied, other than the homestead and the targeted.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
And that brings it, that's the alignment for, some of the other benefit. I have a benefits district in my district, so I was just
Sure.
curious about that. So you're doing the reverse of what I just said.
Yes, ma'am. What we are not trying to get those additional monies applied to any by right tax credits at all. That's not what our intent is. Our intent is to get the application-based tax credits that I listed previously, like I said, to the tune
So
of
that
100.
the surtax would be applied prior to the credits being applied.
Correct. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am, on those 102 properties specifically.
Okay, I appreciate the clarity. Thank you
Sure.
very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a motion to move the amendment? So moved by Stokes, second by Conway. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Is there a motion to move the bill? So moved by Stokes. Second by Conway. Chair Middleton, yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Is a yes. Councilman Conway?
Yes.
Is a yes. Councilman Dorsey? Is a yes. Councilman Glover, absent.
Thank you, Chair.
Councilwoman Ramos? Is a yes. Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Is a yes. This bill will move to second reader at the next council meeting. Bill number 22-0223, Downtown Management District and Downtown Management Authority, for the purpose of renewing and continuing the Downtown Management District and Downtown Management Authority, subject to certain conditions, for an additional 5 years, generally relating to the activities and authority of the Downtown Management District and Downtown Management Authority, and providing for a special effective date. This bill was also introduced on April 25th, 2022, and the sponsor is also Councilmember Costello. You would like some words?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just standard 5-year renewal as required by the originating legislation. I might be talking about
Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, the committee will now hear from agency representatives. We'll start with City Solicitor's Office.
Elena DePietro for the City Law Department. We approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. Department of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We stand by our report, which is no, we don't oppose to the legislation.
Baltimore Development Corporation here. Nina, are you have?
Yep, sorry, I was looking for the representative from the BDC. They stand by the report in support of the legislation.
Thank you. They're favorable. Department of Planning. Eric Tiso. Hi, Eric.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Planning recommends favorable.
Thank you. Department of Transportation.
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City Department of Transportation. We stand by our bill report, which is no objection.
Thank you. Is representative here from Housing?
Madam Chair, Scott Davis, Department of Housing and Community Development. We stand by our bill report, which is supportive.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. Great seeing you in a new role. Congratulations.
Likewise. Thank you.
Department of Public Works.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Marcia Collins, representing the Department of Public Works. We're here in support of the passage of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now the committee will take public testimony, and we're checking to see if there's any hands raised. No hands raised. Are there any callers? Just this one, right? Did you get the sign-in sheet? And we're going to come back to in-person. Okay, did you sign in? We don't have you listed. Are you wanting to testify on this bill? For the downtown,
The snow removal, underground.
the snow remove, we haven't done that one yet. No, okay, so we're just on this bill.
I went to a public hearing 3 weeks ago, and they did it all at the end, the testimony, so it's not clear.
Okay, I'll let you know when you can come testify. Okay. Do we have any callers? What's the name of the person?
It's no name, it's a
Okay.
telephone number.
Okay.
Number 4.
So we do have a caller, number 4. Can you hear me? If so, unmute yourself. Your line is 240-988. Okay, no response. And you can turn in testimony, written testimony. No other callers and no other hand raises for this bill, correct? And I do want to recognize Councilman Glover online.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any? Okay, and we didn't have any amendments on this bill, correct? Is there a motion to move the bill?
So moved.
So moved by Conway, second by Stokes. Chair Middleton, yes. Councilman Bullock?
Yes.
Yes. Councilman Conway?
Yes.
Is a yes. Councilman Dorsey? Is a yes. Councilman Glover?
Yes.
Councilwoman Ramos?
Yes.
And Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
And just for clarification, after this, just to be clear, after this hearing, all voting has to be done in person. Next bill, Bill number 22-0214,
All right.
franchise underground snow melt system for the purpose of granting a franchise to the Johns Hopkins Hospital to construct, use, and maintain an underground snow melt system subject to certain terms, conditions, and reservations, and providing for a special effective date. This bill was sponsored by the Council President for the administration, specifically for the Department of Transportation, and this bill was introduced on April 4th, 2022. Are there any comments or questions before we move on from the committee?
I have a question. Can somebody explain this to me? 'Cause I don't understand what this means, and I only read.
We will get to that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're just getting to that. I'm sure in the agency reports, we will hear that information. But we're going to go ahead and start with the city solicitor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Toth on behalf of the Baltimore City Law Department, and we approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Department of Transportation. Liam, you're on.
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City DOT. Sounds like I got some explaining to do, Councilman. So my understanding, though, Councilman, it's the standard for any of our bills that we introduce through right-of-way division that are going to specifically impact a council member's district. We always try and give your office a heads up. So I believe there was some communication with your office. I have the email thread, but it was a while ago. This bill was introduced back in April. The communication probably happened late 2021. So that might explain why you're not as familiar with this proposal. My understanding is on a specific portion of Monument Street adjacent to the active construction site right now in the heart of Johns Hopkins Medical Campus, where they're currently building the new tower on Monument Street. The plans are to install an underground snowmelt system, meaning they won't really need to salt the area in the winter. It'll just, from what I've seen, sometimes there's just like underground heaters that kind of just keep the ground to a temperature that's warm enough to prevent freezing and snow accumulation. This is a 25-year franchise agreement. The mayor has the authority to revoke the franchise agreement at any point when the convenience, health, welfare, well-being of the people of Baltimore is called into question. And there is an annual franchise fee. It's not included in the bill report, but I have it right now. It's set to be $70.30 annually, a fee for the underground snowmelt system.
So I do have a few questions.
Sure.
And then when I finish, my colleagues, if you have questions, you can chime in. I guess the first one is the snow melt system confined to only one area?
Yes, it's for that specific block outlined in the legislation, and I will pull up the bill report. There should be a plat included as well. But my understanding is it's limited to the sidewalk.
We do have it in our packet.
Yeah. Let's see here.
So it is confined to one area.
Yep.
How will the temperature of the snow melt system be controlled?
So that might be something for is someone here from Hopkins testifying in support of this?
Do we have anyone from Johns Hopkins here?
Okay. So I'm not familiar with how that operation technically works, but I know that this is becoming more common, a common installation. I believe in the governor's mansion in Annapolis, for example, recently had an underground, snow melting system put in on the pathways.
So some of my questions definitely are related to what I think Johns Hopkins should probably be here to answer. One important question that I have is, I remember that there was an electrocution of a person in Druid Hill Park that really, was detrimental to a family. And is there protection for children?
So going through the formal process, like the legislative process, working with our right-of-way division, that is the legitimate process to ensure that these designs, these plans are on record. And I'm glad you brought that incident up, Council Vice President, because I'm familiar with what you're referring to. And that's why, just unrelated to this specific bill, but related to the conversation, every time DOT installs a new sign, in order for us to install a new sign, we're required to have Miss Utility come out, check the ground for, check, their plats for underground utilities. But my understanding is that going through this process, getting this on record, working with our right-of-way division is the appropriate way to make sure this is on record, to avoid any scenario where there could be some sort of mishap.
Is this the first one we're implementing of this kind in Baltimore?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Glover.
I wanted to say that someone named Chris Lagana from John Hopkins is on here. stating that they're here and there's a steam system or something like that. So I don't know if you guys want to elevate them or not, but they're in the chat stating that they're here.
Okay, well, thank you, we'll check on that.
Thank you, Councilman. This
and-
is the first system that I'm aware of in public right-of-way. I'm not sure, because I've only been at DOT since 2019. I'm not sure if there's been installations elsewhere. I'm sure on private property, you know, I'm sure this has been installed within the city on private property, but public right-of-way, since
Right.
I've been at DOT, this is the first type of system.
So, this bill will be sent to the Board of Estimates for approval for a franchise fee. Can anyone share the amount of the fee under consideration?
It would be an annual fee, so it's a 25-year franchise, annual fee of $70.30.
Okay. Does any other committee member have any more questions for Liam Davis?
Yes, I do. Mr. Davis, I don't expect you to answer Hopkins' questions, but I'm a little concerned about if this is the first time this been done and there's nobody from Hopkins here to
They're online.
Okay, well, I want to hear the explanation before I move on my questions.
Sure, and I know that just by seeing design plans for the building that's under construction, that there's going to be an entryway and exit way. For those of you who are familiar with I don't know how many people are familiar with the Hopkins campus, but there's these gigantic pedestrian corridors within the campus where it seems like thousands of people are moving through every day. There's going to be a entry/exit onto Monument Street. And, you know, I think the whole purpose of a snow melt system is to ensure that corridor is safe for pedestrians, not icy, you know, no snow accumulation. But I will let Hopkins, their representative who is apparently on the virtual call, I'll let them make the pitch.
Okay, any other questions from committee members before we get through the rest of the agency reports? And then we'll take testimony. Parking Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Arcos Sem from the Parking Authority, and we do not oppose the passage of the bill.
And Fire Department.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nina Themlis with the Mayor's Office. The Fire Department stands by its report and has no objection to the passage of this bill.
Thank you, Nina. Department of Planning.
Madam Chair, Planning has no objections and defers to DOT.
Thank you. And Finance Department.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pedro Aponte, Finance Department. We don't oppose to the legislation.
Okay, we do have someone that signed up. Ms. Seltzer, is that you?
Yes, but I'd like to hear what Hopkins has to say first.
You can, well, you're based on what your testimony is. We'd like to.
They were online?
Pardon me, are you testifying?
Yes, I am.
I'd like you to come.
Hear from Hopkins since
I'd like you to come up and testify, please. Please state your name and who you represent.
Okay. I first would like to know what is the procedure when the person who is sponsoring it is not here?
So I'd like you to testify. We're going to go to the online and then I'll answer questions, but you're here to come and give your testimony.
Yes, I am, but.
Thank you. I'd like to hear your.
Okay. Is there any representative from RK and K here? Just to clarify, or online?
So, pardon me?
That's the construction company. I just want to clarify if there's a representative from the construction company for this. It says RK and
The
K.
committee is interested in hearing your
Okay.
testimony, please.
Okay, my name is Shael Seltzer. I live in Liberty Square. You can check, Councilwoman Ramos, that I had tried to get the whole plan. The only page that was offered was page 2, which is a diagram. That no one wanted to give me the rest of the report. And I am a representative, since no one else is here. I'm representing the public. I don't know what NTA is. I don't have how much is this going to cost, how much are people going to be inconvenienced. Why isn't this for like people who are need to go into the hospital, who need the safe passage? So, regarding, so I have some, since I can give you some statistics regarding snowfall. Unfortunately, I had all these other papers that didn't come with me regarding rainfall, but this is enough. Winter is 3 months. We don't get a whole lot of snow here. These underground snow removal, there's 2 kinds. One is electric and one is used with hydro, with water or some kind of antifreeze. These are used for places that are extremely steep. People put them in their extremely steep driveways, and we're talking about Buffalo, we're talking about Minot, we're not talking about Baltimore. There's global warming, climate change, greenhouse effect. And I have a very good solution. So just let me, usually there's somebody here to hand stuff to y'all. So what do I do?
You have something you want to give to us as a matter of record? So
I can give you, so I'd like to have the other.
Sir, I just want to let you be comfortable. I just want to let you know that we, as a committee, are trying to get the same answers you are as well. So
Okay.
I hear you loud and clear. So.
And last-ditch effort, I did send, I tried directly to Council President Mosby's email with no response from his staff. No response from the testimony. The Peters, he told me to reach out to 2 other people. One person was on the vacation, the other person didn't respond at all. It just seems like it's some kind of cover-up of what is this. And I don't know if you know, but Johns Hopkins Medicine, Johns Hopkins Hospital, Johns Hopkins University, and again, I'm sorry I didn't bring, I had the mission statement, vision statement. None of it has to do with underground snow removal.
Understood.
And just a note, as of today, they're estimating that 300,000 people in Maryland may lose their care first and will not have any insurance on December 5th with Johns Hopkins. So I think the priorities are way out of whack. That's first of all. And then my solution is there's what's called snow melting mats. And this is something that they can use everywhere. And I have put together the 11 manufacturers in the United States. One is in Hagerstown, Maryland, that can be very well used, really help a lot of people. And the long-term solution, and let me just clarify what the 25 years is because the electric systems gradually get destroyed. So you're not going to have a good system for 25 years. So it's not a good investment, first of all. And I had papers regarding that as well, from statements from people who go and fix these electric systems. And
do you have anything you'd like to submit to us now, to the committee?
Yes, I'd like to submit Baltimore, Maryland snowfall statistics from NOAA. and National Weather Service lists of the Thomas Net manufacturers for snow melting mats, and a brief description. With powerful heating elements between 2 layers of heat-resistant rubber, these mats can melt snow within an hour or 2. Easy to store in the summer, lay down in the winter. You can easily retrofit the electricity. And you know, the chemicals we put on the roads, they're very bad. They're very toxic, and here's a solution that not just Johns Hopkins, but everywhere else. We need to remind everyone that Johns Hopkins is a nonprofit, and I looked at their tax records. They have about $7 billion of just one of their parts. They're after world domination, and there's not an effort to really care about Baltimore City residents. They're basically using Baltimore to become this world-dominated. They have, in Italy, in China, you know, it's not about bad-mouthing them, but just the reality that they don't want people to have insurance here, and I don't have Care First.
Can you kind of wrap up with a final statement? And then,
sure. So I'm going to give you the map that I found online here. Whoever wants these.
Thank you.
Snow melting. Okay, that's the snow melt. That's the solution. These are the.
Thank you for your testimony and your concerns.
Okay.
Is there anyone else?
And can I just say, there's a lack of environmental consciousness, and I have, out of my own heart, in the past 5+ months, have put together a website for somebody who sponsored this that isn't even here, and I still would like to know the protocol of that person not being here.
We're going to get to that. So
and
can you just make one last statement, please? We have to move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
He has yet to meet with me and has canceled any possibility of and he promised on April 26, 2022. And this specifically goes along with the peace resolution passed in 2001 that firmly states that any product.
Thank you, Ms. Seltzer. Appreciate your
any product that hurts citizens.
We respect your comments. Thank you so much.
Any product that hurts citizens is not to be used. When we can have all our streets warm and cool in the summer, and that's what hydropower combined with geothermal can do, which is
Ms. Seltzer, thank you.
Very little to no electricity at all, no coal.
Thank you so much. Do we have anyone else that is speaking in person so we can move on to our online testimony? And hearing none, Ms. Seltzer was the only one that signed up for in person. So now we're going to be checking for any hands raised. And there are no hands. Is her hand raised? Or is she? Caroline Hecker, can you hear us? Caroline Hecker.
Caroline Hecker. I represent Johns Hopkins, and I wanted to let you know that Chris Lagana from Hopkins is on the hearing remotely as well, and he'll be able to explain the technical elements of the snowmelt system. But this is just a standard franchise ordinance that the city's done hundreds of these over time. There's nothing particularly different or interesting about this one.
Thank you. We're now going to get the Johns Hopkins person.
He's called in. Let's see if we can change his role. Let's see if he.
So the representative from Johns Hopkins, we're moving you to a panelist, so to see if you can testify.
Madam Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Chris Lagana. I'm the Senior Director for Design and Construction at Johns Hopkins Health System. Just wanted to clarify, the system is not electric. It's a glycol system. I apologize, it's not steam. It's just a fluid that's circulated in tubing underneath the concrete that keeps it at an above freezing temperature during cold weather. It's not harmful. The system is maintained within the hospital. It'll be paid for and installed by the hospital system. And it's beneficial as we don't have to put down salt or, repeatedly on the concrete, which is detrimental to the surface of the concrete over time.
Thank you. Want to continue with the rest of your testimony?
I'm available to answer questions if there are any.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
And now we're checking to see, okay. No more callers, no hands raised. Okay, getting back to reports. I do, Finance Department, I have a question since it was brought up about could you comment about the fee? Or do you have explain what you can about the fee?
Thank you, Commissioner. We have to get back to you to answer that particular question. We have no knowledge of how the fee was structured, and that's going to be up for the BOE for approval. We don't have that detail.
Okay. Liam Davis?
I think regarding the fee, it's not like it's $70.30 annually, and I know that seems like it's not a lot, but I think part of it is because before the construction, before the building was there, it was a sidewalk. After the construction, after the snow removal system, if it's installed based on today's hearing, it'll still be a sidewalk. So it's going to function virtually the same. It'll just be enhanced. And there's really only a franchise for that tiny, thin layer of underground subsurface land where the system would be installed.
Thank you. Okay, Councilman Stokes has some more questions.
I just have some concerns. This is going to go before the Board of Estimates, I believe, tomorrow. Am I correct? Is this going before the Board of Estimates tomorrow? Is this on the Board of Estimates tomorrow?
She's going to check with the Hopkins representative.
What are you asking? We have this.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I think it does, but go ahead.
Casey Kelleher, and no, it will not.
It doesn't?
It doesn't. Ask it out of committee first.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. But I just had some other questions. Not just the structure fee, but
go ahead.
Not the structure fee, but there's some additional questions. The gentleman from Hopkins, I don't know what kind of testimony that was, but I mean, he was just on there and said a few things. There are other questions that need to be asked, because if you're talking about the 1700 block East Miami Street, that's in my district. There's a lot of communities around there, and I want them to understand what this is and why it's moving forward. And that has not, I can tell, that there has not been no outreach with the community around there for them to understand what this is and how it works. So I just had some other questions, and nobody from Hopkins is here to answer some of the questions that I think need to be answered.
So on that
Aye.
note, we're going. We're going to unmute the.
I am unmuted, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have that I can answer.
So, the council person that represents the district needs to be briefed, so we're going to table this bill until that takes place. Moving on to the next bill, 22-0217, franchise storm drain outfall for the purpose of granting a franchise to 701 Caton LLC to construct, use, and maintain the storm drain outfall located in the city's Lower Gwynn Falls Park, adjacent to 707 South Caton Avenue, Baltimore, Maryland 21229, subject to certain terms, conditions, and reservations, and providing for a special effective date. This bill is sponsored by Council President for the administration, specifically for the Department of Recreation and Parks. This bill was introduced on April 4th, 2022. Does the committee have any questions at this point? And if not, we'll go ahead and move to the city solicitor. We'll start with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Michelle Toth on behalf of the Baltimore City Law Department, and we approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you, Michelle. Housing and Community Development.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Scott Davis, DHCD. We stand by our report and do not object to the passage.
Thank you. No objection. Department of Transportation.
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City DOT. We stand by our bill report. In support of the legislation, similar to the last bill, this is a 25-year franchise agreement. Again, the mayor has the authority to revoke the franchise agreement at any point when the public interest, health, well-being is essentially called into question. The franchise fee that is being recommended to the Board of Estimates will be an annual fee for the stormwater outflow, an annual fee of over $4,000 or approximately $4,150 annually.
Parking Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christmas Age with the Parking Authority of Baltimore City. We stand by our bill report, which is not in opposition.
Planning.
Madam Chair, Planning has no objection and defers to DPW.
Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pedro Aponte, Finance Department. We don't oppose to the legislation.
Fire Department.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nina Themlis with the Mayor's Office. On behalf of the Fire Department, they have no objections to the passage of this bill.
Thank you. Does BDC on this one? Okay. So I do have some questions again. Is the storm drain outfall a new construction?
Yes. This storm drain system is being, or is associated with a new self-storage facility that was built within, the past 3 years.
Is a permit required for the discharge of the stormwater?
So so the franchise agreement allows, the stormwater system to be installed, and I think it's in the Lower Gwynn Falls Park. So that's the area that I'm covering as far as what do we need to do legally to make sure, like if it's installed and it touches city parkland, what do they need? They need a franchise agreement. Me not working for DPW, not as familiar with stormwater, my understanding is that any of these stormwater systems have to meet local and state regulations when it comes to stormwater.
A number of my questions, I guess, deal with, questions DPW would need to answer, and do we have a representative here from DPW? Which I do not see.
No, Madam Chair, I don't believe this legislation was referred to DPW, and I think that may have been an error in the referral process.
Okay, and some of my other questions, again, are about residents, specifically children. How are, they going to be protected by the drain and the discharge of water? How much water is being discharged? Where will the water go when it leaves the outfall? I think these questions are important, especially with some of the issues that we have just recently encountered with DPW and our water system. So on that note, again, I think we're going to table this bill until we get more information. So that's both of those bills. I think we need more information before we can go any further. Was your hand, did you? Okay.
Just in my glasses, sorry.
Oh, okay. Does the committee have any comments on this? I think we're all in agreement on this, that we definitely need more information given to us to move forward in light, especially with the way things are happening, again, with DPW. Moving on to the next bill, 22-0218, city property renaming Robert E. Lee Park to Lake Roland Park for the purpose of changing the name of the park known as Robert E. Lee Park, located at 1000 Lakeside Drive, Baltimore, Maryland 21210, to Lake Roland Park. This bill is also sponsored by the Council President for the administration, and this bill was introduced on April 4th, 2022, and we'll again go with the committee reports. City Solicitor's Office.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Hillary Ruley on behalf of the City Solicitor's Office. The bill would rename the city park property, and this is the appropriate way to do it under the city code. The bill was referred to the necessary agencies, so assuming the council passes it, it would be approved for form and legal sufficiency.
Thank you. I want to hear, do we have somebody here from Recreation and Parks? No. Oh, that's right, Jenny is out of town, and she did send a notice for that. And then I'll go on with planning.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Ivor Kwashi, representing the Department of Planning. Planning is representing favorable for this particular bill. Thank you.
So I do have some questions for you, and I'll stop there, and if anyone else has any questions. So it is thought that Roland Run Stream, for which Lake Roland is called, was named after a property owner, Roland Thornburg, AKA Roland Thornburg. Roland Park Company and the Roland Park community also bear the name of the property owner. Can anyone provide background or historical information about the character or business dealings of Roland Thornburg? And I pose this question because, as you all know, especially we as a council, we're trying to right the wrongs of many things, that names and statues and everything that have just been a detriment to our city, and we're working on improving that. And from an historical perspective, is there can anyone give more information about why it's going to be changed to Lake Roland?
So in doing my research for this particular bill, I know that previously the park was named Robert E. Lee Park. And I know that at the time when this bill was introduced in 2018, there was a great movement to, as you said, right the wrongs of naming some of the city property after people who did not have a positive history, not only for the city of Baltimore, but for the entire country. So I believe that it was the council's desire to do the renamings in the same way that I know that at that time it was the administration's idea to take down a lot of monuments from the Civil War. So I believe that Lake Roland was just to name after the lake that ran through it without necessarily the desire to look up the person's name, and I did not see anything detrimental about that person's name when I did the research for this report.
Can you talk about that, just give us some information about that person?
I did not see any information about that person. So when I was doing the research for this report, I didn't.
So you said you don't know
I do not know,
anything
ma'am.
about that person?
No, ma'am. I do know that the change from Robert E. Lee, which was what the park's name was originally, I do know the history behind that person.
Because I think we really need information about that person, like we asked for any other change, because we don't want to replace a name with another name of a person that has history of discrimination.
Understood.
Slave ownership, you know, down the road. It's just very important that we get historical information. Are there any questions from the committee? Councilman Stokes.
I just have a question, because I know at one time the street naming in the city, DOT changed it, and they did a thorough background on naming streets, because they ran into some issues a couple of times of naming streets after persons that wasn't good to the community. So is that the same process that y'all use in terms of naming buildings after someone? Because I'm not clear, you don't have enough information on this particular person, and actually naming it after the group that was there before is a positive anyway. But do y'all use that same process that DOT used? Because now the DOT, you can't just give them a name and say name the street. They want a thorough background on that person when you talk about naming streets.
Any other no. Did someone want to comment?
I have a question.
Before we did someone want to comment on Councilman Stokes?
I would just say I think there's
William Davis from Transportation.
Thank you. My understanding is this is outlined within city code. So there's a process for naming streets. There's a process for naming parks. I'm not sure how they compare, but it is outlined within the city code.
Yeah, thank you,
Councilwoman Ramos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's my understanding, so this Robert E. Lee Park former Robert E. Lee Park is up in Baltimore County. It is the park around the reservoir. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole movement to do exactly what you just said, Madam Chair, to make sure that we were renaming around the, making sure that we're not honoring Confederates in history. And it's my understanding that the signs are already changed, that there was this whole effort already, and it was an oversight at one point that we hadn't gone through the regular process of naming this to do it legally, and so that's what we're doing today. So I believe it was submitted by the mayor's office. Is that right?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And so I guess the question is, what the, Roland is kind of, it's in my district, it's in your district. I mean, you keep following Roland and you bump into it, right? Well, sort of. And so I guess the question is, first of all, kind of I don't know what the technical problem was in terms of why this didn't get done initially, if it was like an end of term thing or whether it was just an oversight. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Council Member. Nina Themos with the Mayor's Office. It was an oversight. It was a bill that was initiated, I believe, 2015. It failed at end of term under former Mayor Rawlings Blake. This was introduced at the request of Baltimore County earlier this year. The purpose of which is to rename the park as the signage has already been changed and was announced by the Baltimore County Executive. It's being renamed after the reservoir, which is named Lake Roland as well. So it's to conform with the signage that is already in place to kind of just take the final step in the action toward the renaming.
Yeah, Senator Hedelman had mentioned it to me as well. So this is just that last step, and it would be great to know the history of the Roland name for sure. So I'm glad you brought that up. But I think in this particular case, it matches with just the lake is called Lake Roland. Is that correct?
That is correct. It is Lake Roland.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll get to you in 1 second. You had referenced back in 2023 under what was it, 2015? Yeah. Which 2015 was also during the time of the Freddie Gray, and I think this bill tried to come through then and failed. Just.
That is correct. It failed at the end of term because it was not passed by the end of the term that ended in 2016.
It would be good if we have that synopsis in our files as well of what transpired then.
Sure, yeah, we can pull the documents, the bill file from Legistar and forward that to the committee.
Because I believe the history, some of the history of, I guess, Roland Park Company, they have history of deeds and stopping deeds and so on for people of color. And on that note, I'll go ahead and recognize Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wikipedia is a wonderful thing. You can find a lot of information on Wikipedia. There happens to be a Wikipedia article just about this, and in fact says that the Lake Roland Historic District, declared in 1992 as a National Historic District in Baltimore City and Baltimore County. It also tells us that this is city-owned property in Baltimore County that we have for years leased to Baltimore County and is maintained entirely by their Department of Recreation and Parks. It also tells us that it was 2015 when the late Kevin Kamenetz pushed the city to change the name to Lake Roland after a big effort by Baltimore County residents and in collaboration with conversation with Baltimore City. This to me seems like something that we're doing 7 years after the fact that we agreed to heed this agreement and partnership with Baltimore County. This to me seems as uncontroversial as can be. I mean, this seems like nothing but a mere formality at this point. This place is already Lake Roland. That is the name that was chosen for it specifically to ensure that we were not lifting up bad actors here. Again, as you can read on Wikipedia, it is merely placing a name on the lake and the park that is related directly to the historic district designated in 1992.
Understood. And what I'm trying to get here is basically some official research by historical organizations to put into context of this body for us to approve.
Madam Chair.
And just going on, you know, there's still, someone should be able to freely give us historical information about the name so we can have it in our, just going on in the, you know, encyclopedia is not something official that I feel we need in this bill.
Madam Chair.
That, what you had just mentioned is not, it's not official.
If I may. It looks like that the Friends of Lake Roland have done research about this, and so I don't think that they're on, but I'm happy to work with them to, I think that they get, they have a write-up about this. So it's, you know, the Friends group around there has done this research and didn't find anything to be, this is from Senator Hedelman, by the way, she's texting me. So they didn't find anything that was disturbing, and I'm happy to work with her to get that documentation for our file.
So, Nina, could you, if you get, can you work with the mayor's office to get that documentation so we can put it in our file as a reference? I think that all of this, I think it's important that we have this documentation in light of the things that we try to continue to change and make right within our city. It's just having the correct documentation for our files is so important.
Yes, Madam Chair, we'll make sure to get that information into you as soon as possible.
Does anyone from the committee have any comments or any other comments on this before we move on? The Finance Department.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pedro Aponte, Finance Department. We stand by the report.
Thank you. And I think it's important that the Planning Department also works with you to work with Nina to try guide it so we can get that historical information in.
Will do, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. The Baltimore Development Corporation.
Madam Chair, Dave Garza for Baltimore Development. We stand by our report favorable.
Thank you. Department of Real Estate.
Casey Kelleher from the Department of Real Estate. We stand by our report, emphatically supporting renaming it from Robert E. Lee to Lake Roland.
Thank you. Department of Transportation.
Madam Chair, Liam Davis, Baltimore City DOT. We stand by our bill report in support of renaming from Robert E. Lee Park to Lake Roland Park.
Thank you. And I see here twice the, I guess the Office of Comptroller as well. Real estate, we just mentioned the Comptroller's office.
I just submitted one report for both, so double supporting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no amendments to this. Are there any other questions before we move on for a vote?
Testimony?
Oh, look, I'm trying to move it on. Is there any in-person testimony for this bill? Oh, Ms. Seltzer?
I wasn't thinking of doing this, but because of the question of names, and I've been doing a tremendous amount of research to support my peace resolution that passed in 2001 that hasn't been enacted yet. Many of our streams, our rivers, were named after the family tribes that lived there. And so many still exist as the names of our, like Patapsco, that's a larger one, but there's a lot of the Susquehannocks, the Pika, there's a lot of different tribes. I wasn't prepared at all for this, but the Susquehannocks, they have a legacy that needs to be incorporated into Baltimore City. I've been doing as much as I can online, pulling resources from libraries and all, how there's an additional cost than what I'm already putting out. But I've been working extensively for 5 months on reparations, Native and Afro-American here, and I would defer to the Native American, the Baltimore City Native American Center, and work with them as to what would be historically accurate. And I know Councilwoman Ramos, has questions about some other street names and such, and it would be a nice thing to explore and to do this correctly. So I will say that I'm against the name change when there are other more historically pronounced things to
Thank you
commemorate.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes, Councilman Dorsey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've taken a moment here to do a little bit of homework. And there's an article that I'll forward to Jennifer that can be added to the bill file. It's been on public record for 31 years. It is from a 1991 Baltimore Sun article that talks about a gentleman with the last name, a gentleman named Edward Boughton, who is credited with the concept of essentially inventing the suburb. And it recognizes Roland Park as his greatest achievement as such, which in 1991 was celebrating its 100th birthday. It says, Roland Park was named for Lake Roland. I think that's a pretty important concept here because it means that the lake preceded the Roland Park Company that later went on to create racist restrictions. The two are separate from one another. The lake itself, which we are here renaming the park around it, preceded that corporation which co-opted the lake's name for itself. Roland Park was named for Lake Roland, created in 1861, which in turn had been named for Roland Thornbury, a 17th century Englishman who owned large tracts of land in the lake area. Again, this was a person who owned large tracts of land long before the incorporation of the Roland Park Company. I will forward this article to Jennifer, and hopefully this will suffice as a useful record of the history of the naming of this area so that we can all feel very confident that we're not doing anything untoward here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You can definitely add, that can be added to the bill file, but I do want to make it clear how important research is and how important historical information comes directly from organizations that really work and do and get this right, and that's why we want that type of documentation from our historical organizations to be part of the file. Understand that Roland Run was, Lake Roland, Roland Park. We just need more information from historical organizations that do this for a living, and I think it's important that we get it in our file from, again, the historical organizations. And it was agreed that, that would take place. And so moving on to testimony, we have two people, are these hand raised? Kim Hogan, are you here to testify for this bill? Last call for hand raise. Seeing none, let's try the calls. And we see no calls. So if we are missing one or any, you can still submit your testimony to, for this committee.
Madam Chair, there should be somebody named Jeffrey Budnitz on.
And what?
Jeffrey Budnitz?
Budnitz.
Jeffrey who?
Budnitz. We don't see.
You don't see,
we
and there's
don't
no
see that
callers?
person on.
And there's no callers, okay.
They're not in the attendees list,
Okay.
and it's been refreshed.
He was a member of the Friends group I was referring to earlier, but we'll get that documentation to you.
They're not on.
Okay.
And she just did a refresh to make sure. Okay, moving on, there are no amendments to this bill. Is there a motion to move?
Second.
So, and before we move this, we're doing this vote, and just a reminder that we have gotten agreement to add from historical organizations and from via the mayor's office to put in our files. So this was moved by Dorsey. Is there a second?
Second.
Ramos. Chair Middleton, yes. Bullock?
Yes.
Yes. Conway?
Yes.
May I explain my vote?
Yes.
First, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, for asking that question. I hadn't even thought about it, and I think it's something that we should be thinking about each and every time we name something as a council. It is a serious endeavor that I think maybe we haven't always historically taken so seriously. And I also want to tip my invisible cap off to our expert Googler, Councilman Dorsey. I appreciate the quick research you did on the matter. I think with that, I do feel comfortable moving forward. I will say, though, I think it is incredibly important going forward that for especially agencies, council members included, that we come correct when we want to name something after someone. I think we could and I've been in this position myself. You know, we want to make sure that we are setting an example, that we do take these things seriously, and that names behind buildings, parks, streets, or otherwise have the due diligence behind them and can reflect them in the record going forward. So with that, my vote is yes. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Conway is a yes. Councilman Dorsey?
Can I explain my vote?
Yes.
Just kidding. Yes.
Councilman Glover?
Yes.
Is a yes. Councilwoman Ramos?
Yes.
Is a yes. And Councilman Stokes?
Yes.
Is a yes. Unanimous. And this will move to second reader. I want to thank everyone for attending today's hearing. And this committee is adjourned.